morning, everybody. Can you hear me? First of all, I want to thank Tamuh for pulling me out of the trenches of editing my PhD thesis, trying to pull back and take a bit of a macro look at some of the findings instead of focusing on the little commas that I've missed. So I want to talk today about not really one of the findings, but kind of an overall realization I think I've come to throughout this journey. And it's the power of stories and narratives. I do qualitative research, and a lot of times the argument is, how can you interpret something objectively as an individual? Individuals are very biased. Researchers need to, kind of rely more on hard numbers. But I challenge that with somebody wrote those surveys. So I think with qualitative research, we at least are putting our biases kind of out for everybody to see and hear from the beginning. So I want to share a little bit about how listening to stories helped me understand the context. We were trying to solve some challenges within Saudi Arabia. So look at how young people transition out of education and into technical and vocational education and training in the Eastern Province. And the story kind of in numbers originally, because you start by trying to figure out what the context is, what's going on with vocational education, is there's really high unemployment. This is one of the statistics that's thrown out a lot of times when you're trying to talk about the challenges and why we need to get people into vocational training instead of wasting time in university. Academic careers are important, but we also need to Saudize. We need to change the landscape of our workforce. But only very few Saudis actually go into kind of middle-level diploma further education. Most go into higher education, and the majority actually exit education after secondary into the labor market. And that's weird because there are jobs, there are a lot of jobs, and there are salaries, and there are salary ladders, but it depends a lot on the factors that are a little bit invisible, I think. So the remedy and the policy narrative is that we need to match labor market needs. The Vision 2030 has a few very specific KPIs on what we need to do and the numbers and how we need to kind of increase people moving out of that mindset of going into academia. And we want to raise the percentage of high school graduates from 7% to 12.5%, and actually that number has been adjusted to now the goal is more like 30%. So the idea is we need a mindset shift. We need to get young people going into vocational training. We need them to change their perception of this type of education. We really need to sell it to young people. So the rest of the story. Out of the total number of students that are enrolled in public tertiary, so post-secondary education, less than 10% were enrolled in technical colleges. We mentioned this. And however, of all the technical college applicants, only around 30% are successful. But that's due to capacity. There actually aren't opportunities for young people to pursue vocational education and training. But that's not, it's in the policy documents, but it's not the policy narrative. We need to change the perception of the individual and get young people wanting this type of education is what that's what we're trying to solve for. But really, we still don't have the infrastructure to support that. So the stories kind of the young people, I was inspired by C. Wright Mill's idea that the awareness of the relationship between the personal experience and the wider society is very important. So understanding how people relate to that policy narrative and listening to the other side of the story helped me understand that actually that capacity is really, really important. It's not necessarily the individual student's burden, and it's not his mindset that we need to shift, in my opinion. So I just wanted to share a couple of kind of the themes that came out of the data and some of the stories that the young people were telling me. So this is one 19-year-old. I wasn't thinking about the level of education. He wasn't thinking, I want to go into a bachelor's program. And I didn't understand what education is in general. What I was thinking was that everyone said you would get your vocational certification and end up staying home. So just use your secondary diploma to get a job now. And this was the story that was told to him, regardless of what people were telling him. Another young student. There is a saying, they say that everything that is cheap, and what he means by that is easy to get, must be poor quality. So they say if you can get in easily, it must be simple. Since the others have more GPA restrictions, then it must be better. So he wants to go into university because other people think that's what he should do, not because of what he wants. If you seek alternative jobs to Aramco or SABIC, you'll be 40 years old and not even making 12,000 or 10,000 riyals because they're aware that Aramco or SABIC didn't hire you to begin with. Your acceptance of a specialization shows whether you're prepared to study it and work in it or not. So if somebody accepts a vocational position in a college to be a welder, then that's all they're going to be in the employer's point of view. This is what the student's perception is. And these are the types of stories that continued to come out. And so with qualitative research, there may not be numbers, but there are more than 200 students that told me stories that brought these themes to the surface. And I think that we need to reevaluate whose mindset needs to shift in order to create policies that are related to young people and the labor market. Thank you.